Hey, welcome to Spotlight by Livermore Live Music. We're your hosts. I'm Rob Allen.
And I'm Kevin Snyder.
We are here today with the Bacchus Brothers with Ray Merrill and Mark Clarin. Before we get to Ray and Mark, we have a couple of orders of business. Ray, we understood that you occasionally will take just the smallest sip of tequila. So we've got some...
Small?
Yeah. Kevin provided us with some Don Julio... was this
70?
70.
Tastes like 70.
Yeah. Oh, well.
Yeah.
A true aficionado. And then just in case your palate gets a little dry, we also have a couple of glasses here for you of Wood Family GSM from the wonderful Wood Family Vineyards.
And Mark brought his own.
Yeah, right. So I think as long as everybody's comfortable.
It's the Monday's Cup.
The Monday's Cup, yeah.
And then one other order of business. So normally I stop the program at this point and tell a joke, but today I'm just going to talk about the Titanic, not the movie, the actual ship, because I'm out of jokes. I just have the one-liner. Bada bing.
Can we move along now?
Can I thump my head into the microphone?
Anytime you want.
So here's what we're going to do. We're going to talk a little bit today with Ray and Mark about their musical backgrounds and kind of how they got there from here. And interestingly enough, of course, about how Bacchus was formed. We also want to chat with you guys about your live performances, memorable performances that you've had, maybe some of the funniest things that you've had. We would definitely want to talk to you about your albums. I know you've got 3 albums that you've released so far, and I understand you've got a 4th album in the works. We want to talk to you a little bit about that. I'm also curious, Kevin has some questions. We want to talk about your recording and songwriting process. Anything else you want to talk about in future plans. So that's kind of where we're headed today. By the way, before we get down into the details here, I want to mention we would love to have both of you back individually on Spotlight at some point, because you each, in addition to the Bacchus Brothers, have your own stories to tell and lots of other things you're involved with. We're not going to go through those today, but I do feel like I need to shout out that Mark is the winemaker at McGrail. That's a whole story to itself. Mark also plays...
Which is also a venue.
Yes, right, which is also one of Livermore's great music venues. Mark also plays with the Colluders, with MC and the Hammers, with... I'm sorry,
Thirsty
Thursdays at the Shadow Puppet with
Jeff Taylor.
Jeff Taylor. Right. How can I forget that? Right. Ray, of course, is also the drummer in Steel and Dan. You play with the Peppermints. You do a whole music recording business that you're running. And so someday we want to get you guys back in here to talk about that. We won't spend too much time on it today, but I wanted to make sure we drop those. So let's talk a little bit about the Bacchus Brothers. In addition to the two of you, of course, there's Don Vecca and John McGregor. They're not here today, but I want to make sure to give them a shout out and that they represent. But let's get down to it with you guys. So, Mark, tell us a little bit about your background and kind of how you got here from there.
Well, my father was a musician, and his family was very musical, and my mother also has, musical love and all that, but my dad was a banjo picker and accordion and played the violin and the piano. And so he got me involved in playing the guitar when I was 7.
Wow.
Yeah. So I started there in Alabama, and then that's a whole nother story. But then we moved to Livermore, California, and I kind of dropped it for a little while, but then my dad was playing in a band, and so he brought me to his rehearsals, and then I got into high school bands and, did whatever and played for a while. Then my kids were in soccer, so I stopped playing for a while, and then I ended up stumbling into, in my second life, as I call it, stumbling into the Bacchus Brothers somehow. And it was pretty cool how it all came together, I think.
Awesome. Yeah, awesome.
Well, we kind of met at a jam, I think it was, right? I mean, that...
Actually, it was a gig. Remember, your brother couldn't play the gig. And
Jerry, right?
Yeah, Jerry.
And Bill Judd was playing the drums, and... he knew me, and Alex Mahalka, R.I.P., good friend and bass player.
Yeah, great guy.
He calls me up, and I said, sure, okay. And then, so we were in a backyard party on Best Avenue, And that's where I met Ray. And then he sat in at the same time with me at another club. And I remember playing the guitar, and I turned around, because
that was McKay's, right?
Yeah, and I'm playing the guitar,
Yeah.
and I'm just loving the groove and everything, and I'm thinking it's somebody else, and I turn around, it was Ray, and I was like, oh, okay, now I get it, kind of thing. But anyway.
Got it. So Ray, tell us a little bit about your background and how you got into music and how you got here from there.
Well, my dad was he was old school, born in 1907 or something, and he was just really hardcore. Kids must play music, and so he made each one of us kids, family of three kids, 3 siblings. I have 2 siblings, and so everybody had to pick an instrument. And so he came to me one time, at the young age of about, I think it was probably 5 or something, and he said, "Hey, you're going to pick something." So I didn't know what to do, and so he said, "Well, you're going to be a trumpet player." So he gives me a trumpet, and had to take lessons and played in all the bands, and ended up being really good at it. I had a really good ear. I could play in tune, and trumpet's about your armature, really. So it's kind of like bending notes on a guitar. You can go flat or sharp depending on how you approach the mouthpiece. Anyway, so he had me in marching band, and then we moved to Oregon, and then I went up there, and I was actually better than most of the people up in Oregon because I was born in the Bay Area. And then I used to break into the band room in my sophomore year with my student card. There was a big gap in the door. You could see the.
Oh, so it wasn't an ID card. You used your card physically to break in the door.
Break into the door,
okay.
right? I used to so the bus would drop me off there at like some ridiculous hour, like an hour before classes started. So I used to break into the band room and play drums because I was just interested in it. And then one day, and then this went on for probably a month. And then I think one of the neighbors called somebody at the school. And so the dean of students was hiding in the bushes one morning, and I broke in, and he's, "Merrill, what are you doing?" And I said, "Well, I'm just breaking in to play drums." So he was so cool. He says, "Well, I'll tell you what we're going to do. We're going to loan you a drum set."
Wow.
So instead of disciplining me, he basically gave me a drum set to go take home and practice.
Now
So
that man was a true
Yes.
educator.
Yeah, we
Yes.
want to thank him.
Yes.
I think his name was Mr. Eckerman.
Thank you, Mr. Eckerman.
Mr. Eckerman.
Yeah, that's
Thank you.
pretty cool.
Yeah.
So anyway, I had that drum set till I graduated high school, and and I just started playing it all the time, and I ended up being in a band, and then I went off to college and studied, and my whole MO has been take drum lessons from everybody you can, right? And so I used to have 2 or 3 drum teachers. I just go different days of the week, learn different things, and so then just started playing professionally, and then the rest is history.
Got it. Okay. And I will say, of all the musicians I know, you are one of the most disciplined at your art, right? A lot of us, we sort of fall into it. We do the best we can. We take lessons. But I mean, you really study the drums. And like you said, you take lessons from a bunch of people. And so it's, you're extremely talented, but how good you are is partly about how hard you work at it.
Yeah, can you name some of your teachers?
He's
I know what they
he's
are.
like
but-
the Jerry Rice of drummers,
Yeah. Yeah.
He's not only talented, but he works his ass off.
Right.
Well, I take the seat really seriously because the drummer sort of sets the foundation for everybody. So I kind of wanted to go into that responsibility with all the tools in the toolbox. I didn't want to just fake it. So rule number one is play and have good time, have good meter, be able to keep the time, keep the tempo the same throughout the song.
Right.
And when you're a younger musician, you're playing with younger musicians, that tends to be quite fluid.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so,
sometimes even when you're older musicians.
Yes.
no, I've experienced it. It's, there's tug of war going on, right? You tend to want to follow the loudest person. That's usually the bass player. So, anyway, so I wanted to get the most, I wanted to be very confident about where I thought
Right. And
the
approach
meter
it with
should
a lot
be.
of seriousness, right?
Because your mind will play games with you. It'll be like, oh God, am I slowing down? Am I speeding up?
Uh-huh.
So you practice to a metronome. Anyway, I think I just went off into the weeds on your question.
Oh, no,
Your
no,
question-
that's
oh,
okay.
teachers.
No,
Yeah,
That's right.
I just wanted to. I know some of your teachers have been. So
Yeah, I think my first drum teacher was a guy named Cleve Huff in in Phoenix, Arizona. Great guy, smoking drummer. And then I had John Frixis from the Bay Area, and Dave Garibaldi, and
Who some of us have heard of before.
yeah. I took lessons with Joe Porcaro down in L.A.
Mm-hmm.
I used to fly out of town to take lessons. Kind of
Wow.
weird, but and then I had a number of percussionists. I took tabla lessons from a guy, I forget his name. He used to live on Green Street in San Francisco. So I just wanted to learn Indian counting techniques, because Joe Porcaro introduced me to that in L.A. and I wanted to apply it to the drum set.
Just filling out your palette, yeah. Hey, before we're going to move on to the Bacchus Brothers here, but I would be remiss if I didn't ask you. I know there was one band that you were in Livermore, kind of back in the origins of the live music scene in Livermore, that used to play out at the old Red Baron restaurant called The Q.
The Q.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mentioned that because the bass player in that band was another good friend of ours who we had on the show a while back, Nick Selchow. And
Yeah,
so
he's my daughter's godfather.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're pretty close.
Very nice.
But about that gig, we were playing there. It was a 2-night thing, and I was driving. So we had our equipment there. We decided that I think we tore it down because we had something else going on. And then the next day I was driving to it, and fire trucks were there, and the place was just completely engulfed in flames.
Yeah.
I was like, phew. Good thing my drums weren't there.
Yeah. Because I used to leave my gear there.
Yeah.
Because you played there all weekend.
Because usually you would play there for a couple
Friday and
couple
Saturday.
nights.
I remember doing a month of 3-nighters. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. That was a great club, though.
It was.
Yeah,
I mean, for
sorry to
people
see it
who,
go.
we were all sorry to see it go.
Except for it was upstairs.
Yeah.
It was. I remember there was there was a band there that I went and saw. I don't know who it was, but he would haul his B3 and the Leslie cabinets up those outside stairs.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, he had help, obviously.
But still, that's a love of art. Yeah.
John McGregor would do that.
Yeah, he absolutely would. Right. No, John
He's
McGregor.
hardcore.
So John McGregor, we're going to get to this in a minute. Of course, is the relatively new keyboard player
Yes.
in Bacchus Brothers. Yeah. So he didn't just haul his B3 around. He tore a B3 apart and built it into a custom cabinet that he could move slightly more easily than a full-up B3.
That's a smart
Absolutely.
guy.
Yeah.
He is, yeah. Definitely.
So, but let's talk a little bit more about the Bacchus Brothers. So bring us back to the kind of how you mentioned how you two met, but how did that form? Where did the name come from? When did you guys decide, we're a band and this is going to be our brand, and go from there?
Right. Well, we're still working on that, but no, we. So it was 1999, and I had a band called Interstate 76 with Don Vecca and Bill Judd. And Bill, who, local drummer, kind of went through a depression of some kind, and all of a sudden we didn't have a drummer. I was thinking Spinal Tap, right? There's always, so Bill was out and we were trying to find drummers. So we used quite a few actually over the course of the summer. But in the meantime, I had a gig lined up in Switzerland, and that was coming up fast. And it's like around September-ish, and we were going to go in November to Switzerland. And I'm like, so, and the drummer that I had for the Labor Day Harvest Festival was an hour late to downbeat on Saturday, and 5 minutes late to downbeat on Sunday or whatever, or Sunday, Monday, whatever it is, right? And I'm just like, what am I going to do if he forgets to get a passport or
forgets to get on the airplane? Yeah.
Great drummer or whatever. So I get on the phone. I randomly ran into Ray at Casa Orozco, I think it was.
Was I drinking tequila?
Yeah, the old Casa Orozco.
Odds are.
Yeah.
This is the old Casa Orozco, and I had run it, and his phone number was like 443 drum or something like that, right?
That's a great number.
And so he gave me his number, and so I call him up, and of course he doesn't answer, and I said, Ray, I've got this gig in Switzerland I need to cover, and blah, 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 blah. And I hang up, and I swear to God, it was like 30 seconds. Ring, my phone's ringing. Ray's like, what? what's going on? And so I said, look, I got these 3 gigs. I had a New Year's, it was 99, so I had a New Year's gig.
Oh, big time.
Wow.
Yeah.
And then I had a Delta gig, Discovery Bay gig, and then I had this Switzerland week in Switzerland, right? And so I said, you take the gig, you got to take all 3 of those gigs, right? And he did.
Nice. So you all went out to Montreux on the Lake Geneva shore.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
We burned down the gambling.
There you
There
go.
you go.
The name, how did the Bacchus Brothers come up as a name?
That actually kind of happened on the plane in a way, or no, maybe that was Funky Alien Booty. We wrote Funky Alien Booty on the plane, but
We went around a lot, actually. We went through probably 6 different names. And then,
And only 6.
And then that one just kind of fell out like, oh my God, that's like
we
the
made a
perfect
list
name for us.
I think I still have the page. We made a list. There were 30 names on that page, and the Bacchus Brothers just kept coming back as the one,
That's impressive. I mean, we've talked about that on this show before, that there's something about, a bunch of adults in a band that'll spend a year trying to come up with the right name, and then eventually you settle on one and half the band still hates it. So the fact that you guys came up with a name that quick, and it's a great name, and of course it's so well known now. Everywhere you go, it's a big draw to the Bacchus Brothers. You were originally a trio, the 2 of you and Don.
But the fact, I'm sorry to interject,
no,
the
please.
fact that we drank copious amounts of wine, had a lot to do with the fact that we called ourselves the Bacchus Brothers.
Understand.
Well, I would think so.
And,
And I make wine.
It was ridiculous. I mean, in the early days, it was just off the hook.
Just like there was a signal there that something around Bacchus wine.
I remember bringing 3 liters to practice.
Yeah.
I don't know if you know how big a 3 liter is, but it's like
I'm ashamed to say I do.
Yeah. I'd bring, and then Don Beck, his wife, because often we would rehearse at his place back in the day, and she was just like shaking her head, like, oh no.
So there's a lot of people who say, wow, I can't perform if I've been drinking, and my response is, you just need to practice more.
Yeah, right.
So you were
Well, we're good at it at this point.
So you were a trio for a long time, and then you recently, I don't know, it's been a year or so, added John McGregor.
Maybe 2 almost.
Oh, has it been? Okay, yeah.
A year and a half.
Been that long?
Yeah.
So how did that come about?
Time flies, man. It
like an arrow.
It really does.
Yeah.
But how did that come about? How did you meet John or decide you wanted to have add a keyboard player to the Bacchus Brothers? Because you were already well established, big draw. How did you decide that you wanted or needed a keyboard player?
Well, let me start. Let me get you kicked off a little bit, Mark, because I know you got a lot to say about this.
Oh.
But generally when we write songs and record them, it's 3-piece, right?
Yeah.
Bass, drums, guitar. Well, we started adding things in when we're in the recording process because we're doing it for the song. We're not doing it necessarily for, the fidelity of, we have to be able to play this live.
Yes.
It's like whatever's best for the song.
Mm-hmm.
So if there's a spot in the song that absolutely screams for an organ part, then we'll just put an organ part in there.
Right.
And,
Or a horn part.
damn the torpedoes, right? I mean, who cares if you can't play it live?
Lots of percussion. I mean, there's always lots of percussion.
And so, after our 3rd record, the 3rd album, we had lots of percussion and horns. And I mean, we really stepped up with a Tower Power horn. Mick Gillette played some of the horns.
Trumpet and trombone, and Johnny Bayman from Huey.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, it was just kind of a natural evolution. At that point, they were like, wouldn't that be cool? And I was writing some songs that really, really needed keys, and then Mark kind of. So, there you go, man.
Yeah, all right, cool.
You're
So yeah,
Got it.
So the other thing that Ray's leaving out is that we actually have always wanted to add a 4th person. The problem is, or was prior to John, was they had to fit. Right. So,
because you guys have a very distinctive funk groove persona. Not persona is the wrong word, but you have funk groove approach to your music, and not every keyboard player is going to fit in with that.
Absolutely. Well, there's the music. I mean, for me, it's the musical part, of course. Like that is a no-brainer. But it also has to fit in with goals in life and. Like we all have a day job, we all have our other things that we like to do. And the Bacchus Brothers has stayed together for 20 years because we kind of, I guess we haven't quite gotten sick of each other yet.
Right.
And
That's a big deal. It's hard to keep a band together.
I heard there was a move to impeach Ray, though.
Although, let's be clear. Just because he's being impeached doesn't mean he's going to be kicked out of the band. There's still a vote in the Senate, right? So,
but now that we've added a fourth member, there could be a tie.
That's right. So politics aside, but so we did try that. In fact, we had a conga player for a little while, and he musically he fit, but he didn't fit, with, his availability and, the goals of the band. The goals of the band have been really simple. Somebody calls us and says, do you want us to play, wants us to play? And we say, and then we send an email out and everybody says yes. And then we take the gig.
right.
And that's the goal of the band, right? Or
Yes.
Kind of. And then we love playing music together, and we love producing music together. And so we have 3 CDs, and we're on our way to the 4th.
Got it.
So then years go by, and all of a sudden, I meet John McGregor through the Livermore live music scene.
Right. There's this community, right?
Yeah. And turns out he's a good friend with Forrest Frick, who's a good friend of mine. Mm-hmm. And Forrest is a fairly famous local guitar player, right? And so I meet John. He was playing with Forrest, and then turns out John knows Dennis Dove down in San Jose area, and he plays out on the wharf. So sometimes we go out and play with Dennis Dove, But I started playing with him, and I was like, man, let's have him sit in with the Bacchus Brothers with no expectation, zero. It was just like, hey guys, what do you think? And he sat in with us, and he fit, he has good musical taste, and he has a B3. But I think he's fit in very well.
Also a Leslie cabinet, right?
Right.
That's
Two.
a big, right. Yeah. So that's a serious B3 player right there.
Yeah. 2 Leslies, and then he's got the Wurlitzer's gotta be heavy as hell. And he just bought a clavinet, so he's got all the real gear.
Speaking as a keyboard player, it's like total respect for him and his keyboard rig right now. Yeah.
Right. So it just he sort of fell right into place. We weren't looking for him. And then we started playing together. Now he's, we've been working on things together and, rehearsed together and played lots of gigs together.
Well, you guys have always been fantastic, but I think he's been a huge addition to your sound and to your live performances. Yeah.
Yeah,
he fills it out.
Yeah, one of the things I always I missed live being a 3-piece was the fact that Mark couldn't really go to a solo without the rhythm guitar, the chordal spackle going away, right? And so we used to try to compensate for that with adding more background vocals to and just do phonics, just go ooh and ah and da 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 and la la la, just to sort of,
or else the lead guitar has to fall off every now and then and strum a few chords or something.
Exactly. It limits what you can do.
And so now that John's been there, it's so great because Mark can actually do real solos and do real solos without having to worry who's hanging out at home keeping the keeping the chordal.
I get it.
Structure.
Yeah. So we're going to come back and talk about your album work in a minute because that's a big part of who you are. But live performances. Talk a little bit about some of your most memorable performances or your biggest performance or funniest moments or anything spring to mind that's sort of an interest.
Yeah, it's classic is I don't have a glass of wine in my hand.
Uh-oh. Okay. That is readily fixed.
We can fix that. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
We have that technology.
All right. So I just want to say cheers.
Oh, cheers. Yeah.
Cheers
to all.
Can't cheers with tequila. Here you go.
Yeah, you really can't.
Cheers, guys. Thanks for having us on, by the way.
Really
appreciate
Thank you for being here.
Love what you're doing.
But so what's the biggest audience you've ever played to as Bacchus Brothers? Or if not the biggest, a big audience that you've played to?
I don't know. I mean, I feel like that's a tough one. I would, sometimes those patios at Harvest Festival were pretty big, but, Two-Day Town has gotten to be pretty big.
Pretty big, right?
I realize that it doesn't always look so big, if you look at the lawn. But, at nighttime, that thing's packed.
No, I've seen you guys headline at 2-Day Town, and you had, 2,000-3,000 people out there grooving to what you were doing. That's a pretty good sized audience. Yeah.
Well, if you count everybody, the people that aren't down there and all that. But so that's probably that's the one that actually was our motivator a lot of times to actually do something different. And work on different stuff, and even write music and stuff like that. Was what are we going to do for 2-Day Town next year? Because we always wanted to do something different and better, you know.
By the way, if you're listening to this and you don't know what 2-Day Town is, just Google it or just 2daytown.com. It is one of the underappreciated gems of the city of Livermore, the community, all the fantastic things that go on here, and especially the live music scene. If you don't know about 2-Day Town, you're missing a big part of what live music in Livermore is all about.
Hear, hear.
I do want to mention, though, while we're on the subject of gigs, is the one that really still sticks in my mind is that Signs the Papers?
It is. Signs the papers, old man.
Yeah.
I cannot sign the papers. Okay, good. We're all old enough to get the reference here, right? If you're young and you're like, what are they talking about? You have to
Cheech and Chong.
Yeah, Cheech and Chong. Just Google Signs the Papers and you'll find
ways
it.
of making you talk.
Yeah. So anyway, but one of the most, believe it or not, one of the most memorable gigs was actually in Switzerland because we were hired to do this. Yeah. We were hired to do the play in the brasserie, which we called the Brazier because we're childish.
Of course, yes.
Right. And so the brasserie, and we actually it's where we really kind of learned how to play quietly. And so which
is a skill.
Yeah. Well, I forget the hostess's name, but she would just come by. It was like Sigrid, or it was like one of those German names. And Greta, and she come by and, tell us to turn down, and we were literally quieter than the espresso machine. You know what I mean?
That's impressive.
While we're playing, I can hear the espresso machine,
especially if a drummer's involved.
Yeah, amen. Yeah,
exactly. Right. But we really, so we would play every night in there. We played one party somewhere in the hotel for a dinner party kind of thing. And the whole thing was a wine and food and music, thing, which was really cool. California, it was a California experience in Switzerland, right? And so this one night, the general manager of the hotel was this really cool guy named Hans, right? Hans.
Hans.
And we were bugging him because they had this cool bar downstairs that we wanted to play in. And so we played in the brasserie till 10, 7 to 10, right?
Yeah.
And then he had the dudes come by with the carts and everything, and we took all the gear down to the bar, and we played till 3 a.m.
Very rock and roll.
And it was just so much fun. And I swear we didn't repeat a song, man. It was one of those kind of special moments, where we just played all night.
Yeah.
And
once in a while you get those
crazy.
Moments, that just everything comes together. And it's fantastic.
I think it was a huge bonding moment.
Well, some of the employees got in trouble for that too.
Oh, for sure.
Because they came down after work. Everybody was drunk and dancing on tables and stuff.
There's no
Mark,
doubt.
you just hit on something that I wanted to chase a little bit, which is so if you're going to play in Livermore, or actually you can play anywhere, but especially in Livermore, if you're going to play around, you have to be prepared to play kind of a variety of different vibes. Sometimes you're just the muzak, sometimes you're just the background, sometimes you're the center of the show and everybody came to see you. And you guys do it all. I mean, you don't have to. You could just play big shows with a bunch of people come to see you. You have a huge following. But you guys go out and you play little, all respect, but you play small venues. You just like to entertain. Even if it's 2 or 3 people in the bar listening to you, you're out there playing.
It's usually me.
Yeah, no, I know. I appreciate it, Kevin.
Thanks, Kevin.
That's right. Yeah.
Kevin, and sometimes Anna, but she's way less into it than Kevin is, of course.
One other thing that I wanted to comment about was every time I've seen you guys play, you are so mistake-free, right? I mean, when you're playing in a band, there's always you're laughing, but like you play in a band, and so you muff a lyric or you forget a chord change or you get a little off on the rhythm or whatever. Happens all the time. The audience usually doesn't notice it, but the band does. But every time I have seen you guys play, you are on fleek. You just have your stuff together.
Wait.
We have our mistakes well covered.
Wait,
Yeah.
did you just say on fleek?
Yeah, on fleek. You know, it means flawlessly executed. It's a thing. I heard Conan O'Brien say it or something like that. But a lot of people don't know this, by the way. But on fleek is from the French en fleek, which means on fleek.
Oh yeah.
Okay, that was one of those joke things. Okay.
No, we did not plan that in advance.
Talk about your albums. So you have 3 albums you've done so far: Bacchus Philosophy, Funky Alien Booty, and Edge of the World.
That was not chronological, but yes.
Well, so please, chronologically they were
Funky Alien Booty. And
Bacchus Philosophy.
And Edge of the World.
Going back, that's like 10 years worth of recording, or maybe a little less than that, right? But it's something like that.
It's more like 20, but whatever.
Oh, okay. Wow.
I'm kidding. Bacchus or Funky Alien Booty came out in 2004.
Okay, yeah.
Bacchus Philosophy,
15 years, yeah.
2008.
Mm-hmm.
And Edge of the World, 2012 or 14.
We're about four-year average here.
So one thing I want
4 year, except for we had like a 6 year in there, and now we have another it's crazy how fast.
Well, everybody's got their day jobs, like you say. I mean, everybody's busy. One thing I wanted to make sure that, because I know this story, but about writing the title song to Funky Alien Booty.
Yes.
Could you share that with our listeners? Or?
Of course.
Let me start.
Yeah, please do.
All right. So we were at rehearsal. We were having one of those multi-bottle rehearsals at Don's house.
But a groove maker
It
rehearsal.
was definitely a groove maker. And I started this funky drum groove, and I said, Don, write a bass line to this. And he started doing dope, 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 dope. Because I was going, and I said, it's real simple, right? And then Mark started doing his thing. And then I think in that rehearsal, I was just making up stupid lyrics just to have a placeholder for something. And I came up with this Funky Alien Booty. It was like, Funky Alien Booty.
So fine.
And then that's all we had, right? And
Absolutely.
Then we went to South Korea, right? Was that the South Korea trip, or was that the Switzerland trip?
I feel like it was the Zurich trip, wasn't it? I feel like in Zurich we wrote that.
So anyway, we were.
on our way there.
It was on the plane, right?
Yeah, we were on the plane. We were on one of those planes. I don't, because.
Not important to the story at this juncture.
Yeah, there's some great stories about the trip to Korea. I remember they were cutting us off and everything. But anyway, whichever plane trip, doesn't really matter.
I think it was Korea.
But we were, we would write down all these just lines like I remember nipple ray guns and the not so merry minstrels.
Right, just silly stuff.
And,
Stupid
yeah.
stuff. Right, yeah.
And then just trying to,
But there was also freak trip, booty ship. There was, like whatever, like there were, and we were just sitting together and just writing. You're probably right. It was Korea because because when we went to Zurich, Kelly, my wife, and Karen went, so I think we were kind of more separate.
Yeah, so that trip, we sat in one of those 3-row seats on an international flight. Right. I mean, 1, 2, 3. Some poor bastard
middle.
was in the middle.
Yeah.
I don't think it was me. It might have been Don. But anyway, it doesn't matter. But that was back when international flights, they gave you complimentary alcohol, right? So
anything to keep you happy.
Big mistake for Bacchus Brothers, right? So we're sitting there we were just getting so obnoxious. We were writing these lyrics
5 hours in
and just laughing our asses off.
Yeah,
we were like, I took a freak trip on a booty ship. We were just cracking up.
Yeah.
And that's where Funky Alien Booty was written, was in this.
And I've talked to more than one person and said, "Oh, have you ever heard the Bacchus Brothers before?" And they say, "Oh, Funky Alien Booty." I mean, that's their anchor to your music, and it's just funny how
pretty cool.
It's funny how, like, you talk now about how the lyrics emerged, but it's probably not unusual in the annals of music. And you have another album coming up. You're starting to work. Yeah. So talk about that. How far into the process are you?
Well, we have some of it recorded.
Oh, okay.
We're still in the recording process.
Do you have it all written?
Yeah, it's all written, and well, at least
mostly.
I mean, it's never all written until the last song is recorded, right? But
I feel like this is a good. We still have some more to record probably, but we're how many did we get? 7?
I think we got I think we got 9 if you count Abilene.
Well, Abilene.
I love that song.
I do too.
That's going to be on there. But anyway, so I feel like we have plenty of material. What it is we're doing, basics. We're through most of the basics, and now we're getting to the point of where we just need to get like the guitar parts done.
I understand.
Well, that's an interesting question though, because I think there's a process that happens. You go, okay, well, how many songs do you need on a CD? Or should you have? Right. If you're going to go through the effort and spend the money and all that effort, you're not going to put 3 songs on it. Right. And you're not going to put 20 on it. What's that number, right? And so
I like 10.
Yeah, I like prime numbers. I'm fond of 11. And,
11's fine with me. There's
7,
remember?
13. I love those numbers.
Bacchus philosophy. The 11th song was dude.
Right? Yeah, that's right. That was a good one.
But at least it produced a prime number then.
So yeah, and so I think one of the things with this record is we have 2 songs that are actually really short songs time wise. So I'm thinking we need to step up and do another couple of songs. Mm-hmm. Personally, that's the way I feel about it.
We will.
We haven't talked about it, officially.
So how much is John involved in this writing process? Is he involved at all, or is he?
Yeah, I mean, he has to write his parts.
Well, I know, but he's not.
But he's not the writer of the song. So we have a couple of different variations of our songwriting as the Bacchus Brothers. One of them is the most extreme version is Funky Alien Booty, where we're literally drunk off our ass on a plane. Right, and
everybody's just throwing stuff in the stew pot.
But those are the best songs.
Yeah, you should do that more.
Yeah,
right.
I'm just saying.
But the point is, and then we took it. We went on our trip and everything, and then when we got home,
freak trip.
We put that in because the things like dun da 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 da. That came after the airplane trip and stuff like that. The writing, but all that stuff happened, together, the 3 of us kind of writing something together, and somebody goes, how about this? And then we execute it and that kind of thing. Right. But then there's other songs where, I bring something or Ray brings something or Don brings something.
Yeah, it's more like one person kind of wrote the song, but other people embellish it.
Right. And then it becomes, we Bacchusize it is basically. We Bacchusize the individual's song, and that happens sometimes as well. And more actually, this latest album is more like that. But Abilene, I would say, is kind of back to basically I wrote this guitar part and we recorded in Ray's house in Oregon.
Like 10 years ago.
Oh,
or more.
More. Because I was still working for Bonnie Doon. It was more like, it was a long ass time ago. But anyway, but we recorded it. And I remember the kids wouldn't shut up. But we had like one mic in the room and there was this reverb and he was playing percussion and Don was playing bass and there were no vocals. But I had this idea for vocals, but I never liked what I came up with, and I kind of handed it to Ray, and one day, and Ray, Well,
I think so. So the way that actually happened was we forgot about the recording.
Right.
Oh, that was just like it was just buried. It was like in the box underneath the photos.
The thing we did, right.
And then I think I was going through files and I found it and I emailed it to Mark. And I go, Mark, remember when we did this?
Right.
And he's like, oh yeah. And then that's when you said, hey, man, well, can you, well, actually, yeah, we kind of agreed. I said, well, let me take a shot at the lyrics because I've been kind of stretching my wings, writing lyrics, being a lyricist. And so
he came up with that, the whole thing, Abilene, I believe, which I think is brilliant, and then, he wrote all the words and stuff, but it was like he filled the song out because also there's a progression to the song, and he followed that progression with his lyrics and whatever, and it just I think it came out great.
I do too. I think
I agree. Too, yeah,
we should collaborate like that more often.
I agree.
So, do you guys have shows coming up? I know you just played at. I'm sorry, I'm having a brain fade here. No, you just played it.
Where the hell did we play?
Someplace.
It all blurs.
Didn't you guys play?
Well, I know you just played at Rock House, and you played.
We played at the Pine Street at the reunion.
Yeah,
that was a
high school.
That
reunion,
was a fun gig.
Yeah,
because we played a bunch of stuff that we never play, right? And like we played Rocky Mountain Way, and
nice.
We played because it was a 70s, 79, class of 79, so we were playing all this 70s stuff, and so stuff like that came out. And what was what impressed me was we kind of pulled them off. I mean, we did a good job, I thought. And I think it's weird for me as a performer is that I remember songs from high school. No problem. It's really weird how the words just pop into my head and the chords and everything and all the stuff. And I think it's because I played them so many times back then.
So you and Kevin actually have that in common because he does the same thing. Somebody will say, hey, do you remember, I don't know. And Kevin's like, oh yeah, I know that. And he just starts playing.
And another thing I noticed was I'm recently getting back, and Ray will appreciate this, to some old Chicago.
Oh yeah, love Chicago.
The early Chicago albums, and my son is very into my music. Thank God.
Yes.
And he wanted me to get Chicago 5 for him on vinyl, so I did, and he was playing it, and I noticed everything for me is about the trumpet parts or the horn parts,
right?
The horn parts. I know those. I know.
Yeah.
And because you used to play horn.
Yeah, I
mean, you still
can
play
trumpet.
Right.
No, I can't. Ray said it was all about the armature.
Oh, so not so much. Yeah, you got to hold that. You got to keep that up.
I want it back. I recently got a trumpet. I want to get that armature back, but I need to work on it to do that.
Yeah, that's going to take some work.
Yeah, no kidding. May not happen in my lifetime, but we'll see.
Long tones is what they say. Play long tones.
Play long tones. Okay.
Yeah, I talked to a really great trumpet player the other day, and he says, I told him the same thing. He says, long tones.
Okay.
You just hold a note for as long as you can, then go up a half step, hold that one out.
So as a keyboard player, that's probably not as good advice.
No.
Right? Yeah. Just do that.
You get cramp in your hand.
I'm really good at whole notes, man.
Right. So plans for 2020? I know you're still working on Groove Maker. What else do you have in the works that you're looking forward to doing in 2020?
Well,
Feb Fest and 2-Day Town hopefully is going on. I mean, I think those two things are.
Well, it's important. I think you mentioned it earlier to talk about. That's cool photos. We should talk about that.
We will.
But you mentioned earlier about 2-Day Town, and Mark said, hey, how 2-Day Town is a forcing function for us.
Yes.
It always has been. And I think musicians need forcing functions, and we certainly do.
Yes.
I mean, if anyone does, we do. Yeah. And so, I think, it would be a good goal to say, hey, we'd like to be done with a CD with Groove Maker by 2-Day Town. Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm not sure if that's possible, but, because there's still a lot to do.
If we got aggressive, we could do it.
Exactly.
By the way, that is an important message for anybody out listening who aspires to be in a band, or maybe they're in a band but it's new or whatever, is to understand the thing about the forcing function, right? It happens to everyone. You need something to sort of drive you to make things happen. And if anybody out there thinks, oh, well, the Bacchus Brothers, I mean, you guys are one of the premier bands in the Livermore area, And people think, so you don't have to work, you don't have to think about it. It's not true. We all have the same issues about time and time management and something to kind of drive us and move us along and make us need to get that thing done.
Absolutely.
And we also have space between us because Don moved to Foster City, which I'm super stoked for him. It's a great place, and I don't blame him. And John lives in Discovery Bay, kind of the opposite direction. So thankfully, Ray and I are central.
Yeah.
But it does add to the complexity of getting together and playing, especially if it's just a rehearsal, So, which actually at this point, I think all we're going to focus on. If we get together, it's basically for the record.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're going to
we got to get this thing done because we'll all be dead soon.
Well, and so
that's meant universally. We're all going to be everyone.
Well, so that's another soapbox of mine, which Kevin has heard before.
I've heard everything you've had to say before.
Yeah, all my jokes or whatever. But I mean, as a musician and playing in live performances, this is the thing, right? Is someday you'll be on your deathbed and you want to look back at a body of work, a body of recordings, and a body of performances that you're proud of. Now, not everybody does music. Other people do other things, and they'll feel the same way about that. But nobody ever laid on their deathbed and said, I wish I'd spent more time at the office.
Nobody.
Right.
Well, except Mark. He's I make wine.
Oh, that's a good point.
So my office is
okay. The people I work with?
Yeah, that's a good point.
No, I don't know. I just saw a special on Clive Davis last night on Netflix. That's a good one, by the way. You guys should all watch that one.
Okay. Yeah.
He actually loves being in the office because he does music right.
Right.
He's the A&R guy for Columbia, right? I mean, he did Janis Joplin all the way to Milli Vanilli and Alicia Keys. I mean, he spanned 40 years of some of the best songs ever written, right? So he would like going to the office.
Well, I was referring to like going to the office and like filling out daily inventory reports, and which is fine. People have to do it; it's part of the requirement.
No.
Nobody ever looks back and goes, "I wish I'd done
the
more.
Monotonous stuff." But the trouble is, even in music, I mean, the monotonous stuff. It's sort of like, okay, we're working on this record. That means I actually have to go out, boot up my computer and, open up the session and listen to it and then maybe set up some microphones and, or whatever. And,
install a Windows update.
And then, well, I use a Mac.
Okay, but yeah.
But I sometimes, but there are those things where like all of a sudden it's like there's an issue. And you're troubleshooting, and it's always like, oh, I forgot to plug this cable in.
Right,
of
you're
course,
8 deep in problems,
But you're trying to be creative, and you don't have an engineer. And that's where I feel like it would be so nice to just have an engineer that deals with all the crap, and then I can just be creative. Instead of.
Well, I would like that too. If you find that person and want to send them over to my house, that would be great. By the way, if that person would also load and unload equipment at gigs, that would also be fantastic.
Yeah. Ray is also an electrical engineer, and I think he's working on robotics to be able to just have that.
I am not
set up.
Oh, that's disappointing.
But I should.
You should.
Thank you.
Get on that.
Get on that. And also
we're done with the record.
Right. Yeah. And not only should the robot like load and unload equipment, but also bring me a beer, right?
Oh yeah.
Okay. So
he's working on my invention that I invented a long time ago, and it was in a 4-door car, and you have young children, like let's say ages 8 to 12, or maybe even into their teens, of course, but they're sitting in the back seat, and when they're fighting in the back seat, you push this button on the dashboard, and this spring-loaded fist comes out of the headrest and smacks him right in the face.
That's right.
Knock it off. Yeah. It's the knock it off button. He's working on that.
Yeah. Hey, thank you guys so much for being with us. We really appreciate it. And thank you, Don and John, also for just being part of the Bacchus Brothers. You guys are a great band. We just love listening to you all the time. As always, John, Doug, thank you guys at Advanced Creative so much for having us here. We just love your facility. If you're out and about and you need something to do, go listen to live music in Livermore. It's a huge resource. If you're not doing it, you're missing something.
And if you need to know where to find live music, you can look at livermorelivemusic.com.
There you go. All right, see you next time. Thank you so much.
Thanks, guys.